1912. In the Republic of China, Sun Yat-sen has just been elected the first president. In Europe, Serbia and Bulgaria have unofficially created the Balkan League on the off chance that something of major importance may occur within the next few years that will forever change the course of human history. And on March 23rd, in Rist, Germany, Werner von Braun has just been born. Von Braun developed a passion for rocketry at an early age from reading science fiction and science fact, the latter of which propelled him to study and master calculus at an early age in order to be able to understand the physics of rocketry. Eventually, von Braun attended university and joined the army in order to continue his research of rocketry. He even joined a horse riding club while serving. Unfortunately, it's pre-World War II Germany, and you know what that means! Despite this, von Braun led a team of roughly 80 scientists in developing and launching rockets with liquid-fueled engines near Berlin, until eventually he was moved to the town of Piedmont. There, von Braun was joined by a much larger team of scientists, and the team was given access to the use of forced labor camp Mittelwerk in order to develop the A4 rocket. The A4, named as such for being the fourth rocket in the aggregate series, was the first rocket to feature an in-air self-guidance system. A gyroscope inside the A4 allowed the one-of-a-kind missile to detect and correct any deviations from a predestined flight plan by adjusting the rudder and propulsion. On October 3rd, 1942, the team of now over 2,000 scientists managed to launch their first successful A4 missile, and shortly after, the A4s, affectionately renamed the V2s, were launched at London. Reportedly, von Braun, upon hearing the news that his missiles had been fired on London, stated, "The rocket worked perfectly, except for landing on the wrong planet." But much like the best Churchill histories, the factual nature of this quote is likely embellished. As the war dragged on into the later years, certain facts became apparent to von Braun. First, Germany was going to lose the war. Second, if he was going to be captured, he would much rather be captured by the Americans than the Soviets. Therefore, in 1945, upon meeting with American army personnel, von Braun was able to negotiate the surrender of himself and some 500 scientists to America. In America, von Braun was relocated to Fort Bliss, Texas, just north of El Paso, to be able to continue his rocketry research for the United States military as part of Project Paperclip. Despite the project's innocuous name, von Braun was still developing ballistic missiles, only now for America. In 1950, von Braun and his team were transferred to the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. There, they continued to work on various rockets and missiles for Army use. Around this time, von Braun began to receive more free rein in designing rockets for non-military use, specifically his longtime goal of achieving space travel. In 1960, von Braun was transferred to the then recently established NASA, also known as the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, on the condition that he be allowed to continue researching space travel. At NASA, von Braun embraced his dream and was able to begin working on space travel full-time. America, locked in its famous space race with the USSR, was under heavy pressure from the top brass to be able to put a man into space and then onto the moon. However, von Braun's early works for NASA began to be mired in a series of technical limitations. Most infamously among them was the Mercury Redstone rocket, which rose only inches from the ground before stopping due to an electrical prong being slightly too short. These failures culminated with the USSR launching the first man into space on April 12, 1961, just over a month before America managed to accomplish the same thing. Then, in 1962, von Braun began working on the Apollo program, developing the Saturn rocket series. The first iterations of the Saturn rockets were designed to be able to carry people into orbit, and soon they were designed to carry people to the moon. The Saturn V rocket was used for a large number of launches under the Apollo program. Apollo 8 carried a crew around the moon. Then, Apollo 9 tested the lunar lander around Earth's atmosphere. Apollo 10 tested the lunar lander in space, and on July 16, 1969, the Saturn V rocket launched the Apollo 11 mission into space and to the moon, where it landed after its 8-day journey. Man may have reached the heavens, but von Braun was not simply satisfied, and believing the future to be bright, he pushed for continued space development. Von Braun even went so far as to say there'd be a manned mission to Mars by the 1980s. However, an ever-fickle American public quickly lost interest in space after the successful moon mission, and NASA's funding began to see the first of its many large budget reductions. Although America did complete 5 more moon landings under the Apollo program through the use of Saturn V rockets, it was simply not enough to rekindle public interest. Soon after, von Braun transferred to Washington, D.C., where he served for 2 years before retiring. Von Braun realized he would not be able to reinvigorate the Apollo program, and instead began aiming to invigorate the next generation through lectures, the establishment of the National Space Institute, and science magazines. 1977. President Jimmy Carter pardons Vietnam draft dodgers the day after his inauguration. Director George Lucas's movie Star Wars debuts in theaters for the first time, and on July 16th, at the age of 65, Wernher von Braun dies of pancreatic cancer in Alexandria, Virginia.